Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Stephen's breath hitched as he watched through the tinted glass. There she was, Chelsea, in a barely there bikini, leaning into Brian, the CEO, while Grayson's hand grazed her waist. Laughter floated above the jacuzzi's bubbling jets. The trio's closeness unmistakable. His phone captured every damning second. She had called it just a corporate party, but this? It was beyond betrayal. Stephen's mind raced, fury and heartbreak colliding. "We're just colleagues," she had said with a smile that now seemed mockingly hollow. The truth was undeniable, and his next move would redefine everything. How do you destroy those who tried to destroy you? Before we dive into the full story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this tale, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Chapter 1. Stephen Hawthorne double-checked his phone to confirm the text he'd read 5 minutes earlier. "Working late again, don't wait up. Chelsea." He stood in the open-plan kitchen of their sleek, modern condo, the overhead lights reflecting off polished countertops. For years, he'd taken such messages at face value. After all, she had a demanding PR role at a top-tier fashion label. Late-night meetings, brand events, photo shoots, he'd accepted them as normal. But lately, something felt off. The sixth sense that had helped him in software security sniffing out infiltration patterns now bristled about his own marriage. He glanced at the clock on the microwave. 8:47 p.m. Chelsea was a newly promoted PR manager. She'd been out late more frequently, yes, but rarely this unpredictably. In the past few weeks, she'd left early, come home at random hours, offered vague, sometimes contradictory accounts of where she'd been. He set down his phone and drummed his fingers on the marble island. As a software security consultant, he prided himself on detail-oriented observation. He'd noticed how she no longer asked about his day, how she'd grown cagey with her phone, sometimes jumping when a text arrived or holding it so the screen faced away. Then there were those lingering scents on her clothes, not quite her usual perfume. He'd asked once. She'd shrugged, said a co-worker had spritzed something in the office. He'd let it slide, but it gnawed at him. Tonight, he decided not to wait up passively. He'd gather data, the way he would for a cybersecurity client. First, observe. Then investigate. Then confirm or refute suspicion. Only after that would he confront her. He let out a slow breath, fighting the sting of betrayal that threatened to surge. Focus on facts, not fear, he told himself. Stephen tossed together a simple dinner-sautéed chicken and broccoli, trying to ignore the heaviness in his gut. Halfway through his meal, his phone vibrated, a message from Todd. Todd was his best friend since college, also a fellow tech enthusiast. "Hey man, drinks tonight? I sense you're stressed. Let's catch up." Stephen typed back. "Might take you up on that. Let me see if Chelsea comes home soon." A second text arrived from Todd. "She's out again? Something up?" Stephen paused, sighed. "Not sure yet, but yeah, my instincts say yes. I'll keep you posted." He set the phone aside, appetite suddenly gone. He remembered Chelsea had mentioned a co-worker, Fiona, who joked about how their office parties get wild. Fiona was 29, flamboyant, always bragging about the brand's glamorous events. Chelsea used to roll her eyes at Fiona's boasting. Now, it seemed they'd grown close. Could it be just harmless partying, or something more? Finishing dinner, he cleaned up methodically, washing the dishes, wiping counters habits that calmed his restless mind. Another message beeped in from Chelsea. "Might be even later. Sorry, don't worry, just standard PR crisis." He frowned. He knew about standard PR crises. They didn't always require group gatherings at 9 p.m., but he typed a short reply. "Okay, let me know if you need anything. Good luck." She read it within seconds. He saw the read receipt, but no further response. As he turned off the kitchen lights, something Todd had said earlier that week nagged at him. Todd, a whiz at analyzing phone logs, had casually mentioned they could peek at Chelsea's usage stats if Stephen felt uneasy. Stephen had waved it off as an overreach at the time. Now he wondered if Todd had a point. He didn't want to invade privacy, but if she was lying outright, he forced himself to hold off. One step at a time, he thought. Tonight, I'll just gather intangible cues. He retreated to his home office, a glass-walled room overlooking the city, and opened a private notes file on his laptop. Title, Chelsea Oddities. He typed in bullet points. Late nights, 4 times in 2 weeks, no clear reason. New fragrance on clothes, not her own perfume, guarded phone usage. Grace, texting frequently, E. He paused. Grace. This was a new contact who'd popped up 2 weeks prior. The notifications had glowed on Chelsea's phone while it lay on the kitchen counter. She'd quickly snatched it up, glancing at him nervously. He'd asked who Grace was. "Just a new co-worker?" she'd responded. But the text content-only emojis was bizarre. Why would a co-worker text random winky faces or a single heart? He typed a note about that. Could Grace be a cover name? An hour later, the condo felt oppressively quiet. Stephen flicked through TV channels without absorbing anything. At 10:30 p.m., Todd texted again. "Pub near me still open, you coming?" Stephen typed back a quick yes. Being alone in his swirling thoughts wasn't helping. He grabbed his jacket and left. The night air felt humid, the city lights flickering across the skyline. The pub was a short drive away. Inside, the muted bustle of conversation and the tang of spilled beer greeted him. Todd, a stocky man with a good-natured grin, waved from a corner booth. Stephen slid into the seat with a weary exhale. "Hey," Todd's gaze sharpened. "You look like you need a strong one." He motioned to the bartender, ordering 2 whiskeys. "So still the same suspicious vibes?" Stephen nodded, sipping water. "It's been intensifying. Another late night. Strange texts from this Grace's person. She's shutting me out." Todd raised a brow. "You want me to run phone logs? We can see if Grace is real or if it's some masked contact. Might cross a line, though." Stephen clenched his jaw. "I hate the idea of prying. But I'm at the point where I need clarity. Let me see if it escalates." He hesitated. "Also, there's an event next week, a soiree by her boss, Brian. She tried to dissuade me from coming, called it boring business talk. But my gut says I should go." Todd smirked wryly. "I'd trust your gut. If it's an open invite, show up. See what's really happening." Stephen nodded, swirling the whiskey Todd handed him. "Exactly." He took a sip, the burn easing his tension momentarily. If there's something shady, it'll come out in that environment. For the next few minutes, they chatted about Todd's own life. He was single, focusing on a software startup, but Stephen's mind kept drifting to the gnawing suspicion about Chelsea. Eventually, Todd sighed. "Look, man, I hope it's a misunderstanding, but you know how these corporate parties can be. Plenty of alcohol, big egos, flirting. If Brian is charismatic, he might cross lines." Stephen's eyes hardened. "Brian's 42, the CEO of that label. I've only met him twice, but he seemed friendly. Maybe too friendly." He recalled the slight tension in Chelsea's voice whenever she mentioned Brian. "I'm done ignoring red flags." They parted around midnight, Todd giving Stephen a supportive pat on the back. "Keep me posted. If you need me to do a deeper phone dig, say the word." Stephen nodded, driving home in a swirl of thought. He arrived at the dark condo, still no sign of Chelsea. By now, it was 12:30 a.m. He sank onto the couch, waiting. She finally crept in at 1:15 a.m., half apologetic, half exhausted. "Long day," she said, not meeting his gaze. He said nothing, just nodded, letting her slip into the bedroom. He'd confront her soon enough. Over the next few days, Chelsea's behavior remained tense. She avoided discussing work details, cut phone calls short if Stephen walked in, and pretended everything was normal otherwise. Meanwhile, Stephen quietly prepared for the soiree. He learned from Chelsea's co-worker, Fiona, that the event was an executive soiree at a luxury downtown hotel. Spouses were technically invited, but often employees attended solo to mingle freely. Fiona, a bit loose-lipped, jokingly told Stephen, "Honestly, these parties get wild after midnight, but mostly it's just staff letting loose. If you come, you'll see how intense Brian can be." That casual remark rattled him. The day of the soiree arrived swiftly. Chelsea tried dissuading him again, dropping lines like, "I don't want you bored," or, "It's more for the staff, honey." He insisted, "I'll go. Might be fun." She gave a forced smile, but her eyes flickered with unease. That evening, as Stephen dressed in a crisp shirt and blazer, he noticed Chelsea rummaging in her closet, selecting a dress more revealing than usual, a sleek black number with a plunging neckline. She seemed on edge, checking her phone repeatedly. Once he glimpsed a text from Grace. "We all set for tonight?" "Extra fun." Stephen's blood chilled. Extra fun? What did that mean? He pocketed his own phone, determined to record anything suspicious. He had an app that turned his phone into a discreet camera with the screen off. If he needed evidence, he'd have it. They left the condo in near silence. Stephen drove, glancing at her stiff posture. "You okay? You seem on edge." She forced a laugh. "Just a big night. Corporate hush-hush stuff?" He nodded. "I see." But inside, alarms blared. At the Cloud Lux Hotel downtown, the doorman greeted them warmly. The rooftop lounge soared 30 floors above the city, glass walls giving a panoramic skyline view. The place buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. A sign indicated Executive Soiree, Private Event. Chelsea clutched Stephen's arm, plastering on a bright PR smile as they stepped inside. The decor was sumptuous purple ambient lights, plush couches, a DJ corner. Clusters of elegantly dressed staff sipped cocktails. A swirl of laughter and conversation. Stephen scanned the crowd. He recognized Fiona in a sparkly gown, a few other faces from the label's marketing team. Then his gaze landed on Brian. Tall, salt-and-pepper hair, stylish suit. The man's expression flickered with mild surprise, seeing Stephen. Why uneasy? Immediately, Brian strode over, arms wide. "Chelsea, and you must be Stephen, right? Glad you came." His tone was cordial, but Stephen sensed underlying tension. The handshake was quick, a bit sweaty. Brian's gaze darted between them. "Enjoy the drinks. Tonight's about celebrating big successes." Chelsea forced a grin, leaning in to greet Brian cheek-to-cheek. Stephen observed the subtle familiarity in their body language, like they'd shared private moments. Brian's hand lingered on Chelsea's waist a second too long. She looked at Stephen with that same forced brightness. "Let's get a drink, babe." Stephen nodded. "Sure." He walked with them to the bar, his mind spinning. This is real. They're too comfortable. When the bartender asked for orders, Brian recommended some top-shelf whiskey, but Stephen politely declined, preferring to keep a clear head. He only took a minimal sip of a mild cocktail. They mingled briefly. Fiona approached, exchanging air kisses with Chelsea, then gave Stephen a curious once-over. "Oh, so you're the mysterious husband," she teased. "Didn't know you'd actually show up." He feigned a friendly chuckle. "Surprise, I guess. Always wanted to see what these parties are like." Fiona winked. "Well, hold on to your seat. things can get crazy. She drifted away. Chelsea shot Stephen a glance that screamed, "Don't wander off." He found that suspicious in itself. She typically allowed him free rein at gatherings. Why did she want him close? Possibly to keep him from seeing something. His phone vibrated. Todd calling. He stepped aside, pressing it to his ear. Todd said, "Stephen, I found something in the phone plan. Looks like repeated calls from that Grace's number at odd hours. Not sure if—" The call crackled. Static. "Something's definitely suspicious. Keep your eyes open." Then the line cut. Stephen's pulse quickened. Grace might be the key. He stuffed his phone away, returning to find Chelsea gone. A few co-workers lingered at the bar, smirking. He forced a casual tone. "Where'd Chelsea head off to?" Miranda, another co-worker, shrugged with a coy smile. "She's around, probably, upstairs. She likes the after-party." After-party? He frowned, setting his drink down. Perhaps he'd glean the truth if he found it. Without a word, he headed off to search for her. Chapter 2. Stephen threaded through the lounge crowd, scanning for any sign of Chelsea. The main rooftop bar bustled with executives in fancy attire, sipping cocktails under dim mood lighting. The DJ's music thumped softly, overshadowed by the chatter of small groups. Yet no trace of his wife. With each step, a knot tightened in his gut. She specifically asked me not to come, then she vanishes within half an hour? He recalled Todd's half-stuttered phone call about suspicious logs. Coupled with Grace, the co-worker who might be a disguised Grayson, and the earlier wild office parties rumor from Fiona, it all pointed to hidden corners of this event. He approached a passing waiter, discreetly asking if there was another level to the party. The waiter blinked, then mentioned a private pool area on the top floor, accessible only by certain staff key cards. That was enough for Stephen. She's definitely up there. He resolved to investigate quietly. As he slipped past a roped-off hallway, he encountered subtle resistance from a bored-looking security guard. "Sorry, sir. VIP area for staff only." Stephen forced a polite smile, feigning confidence. "Oh, I'm with the PR manager, Chelsea Hawthorne. She left her pass with me." He flashed a random business card from his wallet, hoping the guard wouldn't scrutinize it. The guard frowned, uncertain. Just then, Miranda, the co-worker who'd teased him earlier, strolled by, heading up as well. Stephen seized the moment. "Miranda, perfect timing. Mind telling the guard I'm with the team?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly hesitant, but mustered a fake grin for the guard. "Yes, he's with us." The guard shrugged and let them pass. As they walked, Miranda gave him a wry smirk. "You sure you want to see what's upstairs? Not exactly a spouse-friendly vibe." He kept his expression cool. "I'll manage," she chuckled, tapping her ID on the elevator console. They stepped in together. The elevator whooshed up to the top floor. Stephen's heart pounded. A part of him dreaded what he might find some half-naked spree or a swirl of questionable behavior. Another part wanted proof no matter how painful. Miranda parted ways with him the moment they stepped into a glossy foyer, lit by neon strips. She gave a cryptic wink and moved toward a side corridor. Stephen inhaled, following posted signs that read, "Pool and Lounge." Down a short hall, tinted glass doors separated him from a softly lit area beyond. The faint sound of laughter and splashing water echoed. He approached carefully, pressing a hand to the glass. Through it, he saw a glimmering indoor pool with lounge chairs, a hot tub at one end. Ambient purple lighting cast a surreal glow. He spotted about half a dozen people in or around the water, some with cocktails in hand, others in minimal swimwear. The vibe was definitely more risque than a typical corporate event. At first glance, He didn't see Chelsea. Then a flash of motion drew his eye. In the far corner, near a half-hidden jacuzzi nook, a woman with wavy brown hair was perched on the ledge. Stephen's heart lurched. It was Chelsea, her dress nowhere in sight, replaced by what looked like a skimpy bikini top, or maybe less. Water obscured some details. Beside her sat a man with broad shoulders, Brian, presumably, if that silhouette matched the earlier impression. Another man hovered close, possibly Grayson. They were mid-laugh, glancing around as though sharing a private joke. Stephen's blood ran cold. He stepped aside, turning on his phone's discreet recording app. The screen went dark, but he confirmed the camera was active. He moved to a vantage point behind a potted palm, hoping to capture enough footage to confirm any wrongdoing. I need proof. His heart hammered. He zoomed in. The water bubbled around them. Music pulsed softly from a hidden speaker. The man he believed to be Brian had an arm draped around Chelsea's shoulders. Grayson lingered on her other side, occasionally brushing her leg. She was laughing, her posture relaxed, as though this intimate arrangement was normal. Stephen's stomach twisted. This was beyond just drinks. He started capturing. The phone recorded shaky visuals, enough to identify faces. At one point, Chelsea leaned her head onto Brian's shoulder, and Brian planted a quick peck on her cheek. She giggled. Grayson's hand traveled under the water near her waist. The tension in Stephen's chest flared into near panic. She's in a three-way flirtation, at least, he realized, mind reeling. Possibly more than flirtation. He stabilized himself. Stay calm, gather data, no meltdown here. Each second of footage hammered home the betrayal. The woman he loved, who he'd built a life with, was cozying up to not one but two men from her workplace in a clandestine VIP area. Suddenly, Fiona ambled into the jacuzzi zone, wearing a bikini. She greeted the trio with a playful wave, hopped in. The conversation was muffled by the jacuzzi's jets, but from their body language, it was clear all four were comfortable in a borderline sexual context. No sign of awkwardness that a married woman was half naked, pressed between two men. Brian whispered something that made Chelsea laugh and toss her wet hair back. Stephen felt nauseated. He recalled the wild office parties rumor. This was apparently the norm. She'd lied to him each time she said, "Nothing interesting happened." Meanwhile, Todd's clue about Grace likely being Grayson confirmed it further. This Grace contact was intimately close. A surge of rage threatened to break Stephen's calm. He clenched his teeth, reminding himself, I can't blow up now. If he stormed in, they'd deny it, or spin it. He needed unassailable evidence. He kept his phone steady, filming another minute. A new voice from behind startled him. "Hey, buddy, you lost?" Stephen nearly jumped. A different staffer approached, maybe security or a co-worker, glaring suspiciously. Stephen scrambled to pocket his phone, adopting a neutral expression. "Oh, sorry. Looking for the restroom." The staffer pointed back down the hall. "Restrooms that way. This area's for private guests." Stephen forced a polite nod. "My apologies." He stepped away, pulse hammering. That was close. He'd already captured enough incriminating footage, though. He retreated down the corridor, cursing under his breath. He paused near the elevator, the realization hitting him full force. She's definitely cheating. Possibly an ongoing arrangement with her boss. Maybe Grayson, too. This is no one-time slip. The phone in his pocket felt like a ticking bomb of evidence. Deciding he needed more clarity, he circled around to see if there was another vantage point. Down a side hallway, he found an emergency exit door. Some hotels had external catwalks leading to alternate lounge areas. He carefully opened it, stepping onto a deserted terrace. The night breeze buffeted him, city lights sprawling below. A metal stairwell led up a half-level, presumably to mechanical rooms. If the layout was standard, maybe he could peer through a high window near the pool's back. He climbed quietly, heart pounding, determined to confirm the extent of Chelsea's betrayal. Reaching a small utility window, he peered in. The angle was limited, but he glimpsed a partial view of the jacuzzi's back. Chelsea had apparently moved, now perched in Brian's lap, arms around his neck, kissing him full on the mouth. Fiona and Grayson conversed closely near them, laughing. This was far from any PR business meeting. Stephen felt an icy calm settle in. He recorded a few more seconds. That was enough. He had all the proof needed to confront her. Time to leave. He would not cause a public scene. Let them keep their illusions. He'd handle it his way. Quietly, he made his way back down the terrace steps, slipping into the interior hallway. He took the elevator to the lobby, ignoring the curious stares of a few staffers. His mind churned with anger, heartbreak, and resolve. His phone buzzed, Chelsea texting. "Where did you go? Thought you were at the bar." He snorted at the irony. She was probably half panicked he might discover the jacuzzi scene. Too late. I already did. He typed a curt reply. "Left. Have a good night." Then powered off his phone. That was enough for now. He exited the Cloudlux Hotel, stepping into the city's neon-lit streets, the swirl of cars and voices overshadowing his internal turmoil. He arrived home alone, adrenaline still spiking, though exhaustion pressed at his temples. Dropping onto the couch, he replayed the video briefly, ensuring it was saved and stable. The images were undeniably damning. Chelsea's partial nudity, kissing Brian. Grayson's hand on her. No one could spin that as harmless. He breathed, shutting his eyes. Scenes of their life flashed. The wedding day, romantic vacations, quiet movie nights, all overshadowed now by that twisted hot tub fiasco. She's done. He might not fully decide how to proceed, but one thing was sure. He wouldn't be a clueless victim. Tomorrow he'd plan his next move. Possibly talk to Todd about a deeper phone log check. He'd gather unstoppable evidence, then confront her. This time her lies wouldn't stand a chance. Chapter 3. The next morning, Stephen woke at dawn, groggy and unsteady. He'd slept fitfully, nightmares replaying the humiliating scene of Chelsea entwined with Brian and Grayson. The first thing he did was check his phone. There were half a dozen missed calls from Chelsea after 2 a.m. She must have realized something was off. He ignored them all. He started coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen as early sunlight slanted through the windows. Sipping from his mug, he steeled himself to call Todd. The phone rang twice. Then Todd's upbeat voice answered. "Morning, man. Any news?" Stephen exhaled slowly. "I got the worst news possible. She's definitely cheating, Todd. I saw it. Filmed it." A stunned silence. Then Todd muttered, "Shit, I'm sorry, bud. That's tough. But at least you have proof. Need me to do anything?" Stephen rubbed his forehead. "Yes. I want a thorough phone log trace. Verify who this Grayson is, confirm call frequencies. Maybe we can see how long this has been going on. I also want to see if she's funneling money or something weird. She's gone too far." Todd made a determined grunt. "On it. Send me the phone details. I'll see if I can parse old backups, too." Coffee in hand, Stephen stepped into the living room, noticing some of Chelsea's belongings scattered. A cardigan on the couch, a pair of heels by the door. He felt a spike of anger. She shamelessly waltzed in here, pretended to be faithful, while hooking up with multiple co-workers. He rummaged for a large suitcase from the closet, yanking out her shoes and a handful of her clothes, tossing them in. Perhaps a preamble to kicking her out. But he paused. He wanted a systematic approach, not a rage-fueled meltdown. Instead, he set the suitcase aside, half-packed, a visual reminder of what was coming. He flicked on the TV for background noise. The local news droned about city council updates. His mind drifted to last night Chelsea, Brian, and Grayson in that hot tub, carefree. Maybe this had been going on for months. Perhaps it was a repeated after-party routine. The betrayal cut deeper than any short fling. They humiliated me, he thought. They must pay. Before 8 a.m., the door unlocked. In walked Chelsea, looking exhausted, hair damp as if she'd showered somewhere else. She froze upon seeing Stephen awake, arms folded in the living room. Her eyes flicked to the half-packed suitcase. "Stephen, we need to talk." He stared coolly. "Indeed. Where do you want to start? The jacuzzi or the locked lounge?" Her face blanched. You saw?" She swallowed, glancing at the suitcase. "Stephen, it's not what it looks like." He gave a hollow laugh. "Really? Because it looked like you topless? Getting cozy with Brian and that so-called Graces who's actually Grayson, right?" He snatched his phone, tapped to play a short snippet of the video. She gasped, hand flying to her mouth. She stammered, It was just a silly drunken thing, I swear. I wasn't thinking clearly. It's a PR job hazard. Everyone flirts." He cut her off, fury in his eyes. "Don't insult my intelligence. This was beyond flirting. I saw it all. And from your co-workers' hints, this isn't the first time." Chelsea's eyes welled up. I messed up, okay? But it's complicated. Brian's been pushing this weird bonding culture. Grayson flirts with everyone. She struggled to form coherent excuses. "I was trying to keep up for the sake of my job." Stephen's jaw tightened. "Your job requires group makeouts in a restricted pool area? Spare me. You lied to me for weeks. Didn't even bother to hide it well." She sobbed, stepping closer, but he stepped back. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I never meant to hurt you. It just got out of hand." He glared. "Got out of hand? You fully participated. Don't even pretend you were coerced." She opened her mouth, closed it again. She had no real defense. Moments passed in thick silence. Finally, he motioned to the suitcase. "I want you gone. Take what you need, leave your key, and get out. I'll talk to a lawyer about the rest. We're done." She broke into frantic tears, pleading, "No, Stephen, wait, don't do this. I'll quit the job. I'll never see them again. It was a huge mistake." He snorted. "A huge, repeated mistake. You lost the right to call it a one-time slip. I have video evidence showing otherwise." She fell to her knees, gripping his arm. "I love you. It was stupid. Please, let's talk about therapy or something. I can fix this." Her tears splattered on the floor, but he felt no compassion left. The trust was gone. He pried her hands off. "You love me, but you do that? That's not love. Don't degrade the word. Pack your stuff and go, or I'll have your things thrown out." "Your choice." Her sobbing intensified. She stared at him, perhaps expecting a softening, but found none. He turned away, giving her space to gather items. Eventually, she rose, trembling, heading to the bedroom. While she packed, he texted Todd. "Confirmed cheating. I told her to leave. Ready for phone analysis if you have anything." Todd replied, "On it. Sending logs soon. Gonna pick up more forensic data from her co-worker, Fiona's socials, if possible." Stephen nodded to himself. Meanwhile, Chelsea emerged with a small suitcase, eyes puffy. "I'll stay with a friend, but can we talk tonight?" He scoffed. "I doubt it. I'll let you know if I want to hear more excuses." She burst into fresh tears, but he stayed silent, opening the door. She walked out, turning once to see if he'd relent. He didn't. She slunk away, heels clicking in the hallway. He closed the door, heart pounding. The quiet condo now felt like an empty shell, memories swirling holidays together, lazy weekends on that very couch. He took a shaky breath, then reminded himself, she's betrayed me. She must face the consequences. An hour later, Todd arrived in person, laptop in hand. He found Stephen slumped at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "Hey, man," Todd said softly. "I'm sorry you had to see that." He placed the laptop down. "I pulled the phone records. You were right, this Grace's is a second phone line named Grayson M. He's also CC'd on some brand event emails. They talk at 3 a.m. sometimes." Stephen nodded, teeth clenched. "Figures. How extensive?" Todd scrolled. "Going back about 6 months. The frequency ramped up 2 months ago. Some messages are just emojis, but others mention private parties. References to meeting with Brian. This is bigger than a fling, some twisted group dynamic." Stephen's stomach roiled. "So it's been a group thing with Brian and Grayson? For months?" Todd grimaced. "Looks like it. Sorry, man." Stephen stared at the logs, fury intensifying. He wanted to punch something, but controlling that impulse, he channeled it into planning. "All right, let's compile everything. I'll see a divorce attorney. We'll cite adultery with multiple parties. If the state laws allow, we can pursue that. She's not getting a cent without a fight." Todd nodded. "Smart. Also, I found a weird detail. Brian's firm is rumored to be engaged in some questionable finance deals. Could be hush money or laundering." Stephen's brow furrowed. Maybe that's relevant. If so, it might explain how they funded these lavish parties." Todd shrugged. "Possibly. But focus on your divorce. If they're shady, the authorities might jump in anyway." By midday, Stephen had a folder of evidence. Phone logs, the jacuzzi video, suspicious texts referencing private fun. He skimmed them, each line twisting the knife deeper, but he forced a calm, strategic mindset. "I'll handle this like a security breach. Gather evidence, isolate the threat, remove the compromised elements." He called an aggressive divorce attorney recommended by Todd, left a voicemail outlining his situation. "My wife's been cheating with her boss. I have video proof. I want an immediate consult." A sense of grim satisfaction accompanied the step. That evening, he found himself alone in the condo, rummaging through the fridge for a simple dinner. The place felt eerily quiet. This time he had no illusions he wasn't waiting for her to come home. She was gone. Around 9 p.m., his phone lit up with a call from Chelsea's co-worker, Fiona. Surprised, he answered. Fiona sounded anxious. "Stephen, hi. Look, I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but I heard Chelsea left the office in tears. She said you found out everything." Stephen's jaw clenched. "Yes, I did." Fiona hesitated. "I just wanted to say I didn't know it was that serious. I saw them fooling around at events, but I never thought it'd blow up like this. Brian's furious. He's telling HR that you're trying to sabotage him." Stephen gave a mirthless laugh. "He's the one who's been sabotaging my marriage. If he thinks I'll roll over, he's mistaken." Fiona mumbled an apology, sounding guilty. "Be careful, Brian is manipulative. Also, watch out for Grayson. He's bad news." Stephen thanked her curtly and hung up. Another wave of anger churned. Let Brian fume. Let them all try to scapegoat him. They have no idea who they're dealing with. The husband they dismissed as a clueless geek was about to unleash a strategic, devastating response. Chapter 4. Stephen woke the next morning determined to formalize his confrontation. He had an appointment with the aggressive divorce attorney, Ms. Delgado, at noon. Before that, he scrolled through new texts from Chelsea. "Please let me explain. I'm so sorry." "I'll do anything, Stephen. Don't shut me out." "Brian made me do it. I was scared." He snorted at the shifting excuses. Fear. Sure, she might be intimidated by a high-powered boss, but she'd also reveled in it. He had the footage to prove her active participation. He typed no reply, letting her desperation stew. He arrived at Ms. Delgado's downtown office, a sleek high-rise with tinted glass. The waiting room was plush, the receptionist directing him to a conference room. Soon Ms. Delgado, a poised woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, entered. She shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Hawthorne, pleased to meet you. Let's get right to business." They sat, and Stephen opened a folder of evidence, sliding it over. "Cheating with her boss and another co-worker. I have video, phone logs, texts. I want a file on grounds of adultery, mental cruelty, everything possible." Ms. Delgado's expression hardened. "I see. This is quite damning." She tapped the video still shot of Chelsea in the jacuzzi. "Are you prepared for the public nature of such evidence if it goes to court?" Stephen swallowed. "Yes, if necessary. She humiliated me. I'm not letting her whitewash it." Delgado nodded approval. "Good. In this state, adultery can heavily influence asset division if proven. We can push for minimal spousal support or none. You might get a majority of the assets if the judge sees this as egregious misconduct." He gave a grim smile. "That's exactly what I want." Delgado asked for chronological details, how he discovered the affair, the timeline of suspicious behavior. He recounted everything: the late texts, the new Grace Grayson contact, the wild soiree. She took rapid notes, occasionally raising her eyebrows at the group aspect. "This is more than a typical affair. Looks like a full-blown multi-partner situation. The court won't look kindly on that, especially if it impacted your emotional well-being." Stephen nodded, heat rising in his cheeks. "I've been humiliated enough. I want to ensure she can't claim half of everything I've built." Delgado reassured him. "We'll go for a fault-based divorce. If we prove her infidelity, the judge can favor you in property distribution. Also, keep that video secure. Some states have revenge porn laws, but using it in divorce proceedings for evidentiary purpose is typically allowed." He felt relief. "Understood. I'll follow your lead." They planned the next steps, drafting a formal complaint citing adultery, listing the recorded evidence, naming Brian and possibly John Doe Grayson as correspondents. Ms. Delgado also mentioned a potential alienation of affection lawsuit against Brian if the jurisdiction allowed it. That concept intrigued Stephen. He could sue the boss directly for damages. He liked the idea of hitting Brian's reputation and finances. "That might push him to settle quickly," Delgado explained. "High-level executives don't want that scandal aired out. He might pay a large sum to avoid depositions about the jacuzzi parties." Stephen's lips curled in satisfaction. "Good. Let him squirm." Leaving the attorney's office, Stephen felt a surge of empowerment. This was the path forward. No more illusions, no more second chances for Chelsea, only strategic revenge. He dialed Todd, updating him. Todd whistled. "Sounds like Delgado's a bulldog. Perfect. Need me for anything else?" Stephen paused. "Yes. Let's check if we can find evidence of shady finances at Brian's label. If they're laundering money or something, Ms. Delgado might use that as leverage, too." Todd chuckled. "I love it. We'll bury them if they're dirty." Returning home, Stephen found the condo eerily quiet. He spotted a few missed calls from an unknown number. Possibly Brian trying to intimidate him, or Grayson. He refused to pick up. Instead, he brewed coffee, planning how to handle the moment he served the divorce papers. Ms. Delgado recommended a process server do it at Chelsea's workplace or wherever she was staying. That would be a public humiliation, one that might knock her off balance. He scrolled through social media on a spare account, noticing that Chelsea's profile had no mention of him recently, just pictures with co-workers at events. Oddly, Grace, or Grayson, was tagged in some group photos with sly captions like, "The best nights are the ones you can't tell about." Disgusting, Stephen thought, saving screenshots. An hour later, he received a text from Fiona. "Chelsea's meltdown at the office. Boss is stressed. Everyone's whispering about your evidence. People suspect you have a lawyer." He typed back a curt, "They'll see soon enough?" Nightfall brought another wave of calls from Chelsea, which he ignored. Then a single text from her popped up. "We need to talk in person, please. Don't do anything rash." He rolled his eyes. Don't do anything rash. She should have thought of that before hooking up with two men. He typed no reply. Instead, he re-watched the video, fueling his resolve. The heartbreak was overshadowed by the humiliating imagery of her draping herself over Brian, kissing him openly. He needed that anger to stay focused. He decided on a whim to call his older sister Monica, who lived in another state. She knew nothing of the drama yet. He told her everything in a condensed version. She was outraged on his behalf. "Stephen, she's trash. You deserve better. If you want me to come help you pack her stuff, say the word." He smiled softly. Monica was always protective. "Maybe soon. Thanks, sis." The next morning, Ms. Delgado emailed him a draft of the divorce complaint. It detailed how Chelsea willfully engaged in repeated adulterous acts with co-workers Brian Dawson and John Doe, identified as Grayson M., causing extreme emotional distress to Stephen Hawthorne. The language was pointed, referencing documented photographic and video evidence. It also requested an injunction that prevented Chelsea from disposing of any marital assets. Stephen read it with grim satisfaction, approving it with a single note, "Looks good. Proceed." That day, Ms. Delgado arranged for a process server to deliver the complaint to Chelsea at her office. The firm's HR manager would likely witness the humiliation. Delgado said it was often strategic to serve someone at their workplace, gave them a taste of public consequences. Sure enough, by noon, Fiona messaged, "Holy crap! A dude just showed up with official papers. Chelsea ran out crying. Brian's livid. People are whispering about a lawsuit." Stephen's heart thudded. Good. He typed a curt response. "I'm not playing games." Fiona replied, "I get it. Just be careful. Brian's super angry. He might do something." He inhaled, mind flashing to potential confrontation. He doubted Brian had the gall to face him physically, but either way, he was prepared, possibly getting a protective order if Brian threatened him. Late afternoon, a frantic call from Chelsea's phone. Stephen answered for once, wanting to see her reaction. She launched into tears. "You served me at work? In front of everyone? How could you humiliate me like that?" He barked a harsh laugh. "Humiliate you? You humiliated me in that jacuzzi. Consider this payback. The legal process is only starting." She begged, voice cracking. "Let's talk privately. Please, can we fix it without lawyers?" He stiffened. "No, that's over. You made your choice. Enjoy dealing with my attorney." He hung up, ending the conversation. As evening fell, he gazed at the city lights from the condo's balcony, a swirl of emotions, anger, heartbreak, satisfaction, warring within him. He concluded that the showdown was truly on. Chelsea, Brian, Grayson, all would face the consequences. And he'd ensure that by the time it was over, they'd regret underestimating the software geek they tried to fool. Chapter 5. Stephen Hawthorne sat in his dimly lit living room, the early morning sun just beginning to glow through the slatted blinds. The coffee in his mug had gone lukewarm, untouched, for the better part of an hour. He'd spent the time hunched over his laptop, rereading the divorce complaint Ms. Delgado had prepared. The language was pointed, legalistic, damning accusing his wife, Chelsea, of willful adultery with multiple parties, including her boss Brian and co-worker Grayson. He felt a swirl of grim satisfaction. Over the last few days, he'd forced Chelsea out of the condo, cut off her manipulative pleas, and initiated the legal process. He'd come a long way from the naive husband who suspected nothing. A rap on the door startled him. It was early. Who could that be? He set the mug aside and opened the door to see Todd, his longtime friend and tech ally, standing there with a laptop bag slung over one shoulder and a fast food coffee in hand. "Morning, man," Todd said, stepping in uninvited. He wore a sympathetic but determined expression. "Figured you could use real coffee, and I've got some data to show you." Stephen mustered a tight smile. "Thanks. Come on in." They settled at the glass-topped dining table. Todd cracked open his laptop, booting to a private partition. Todd handed Stephen a paper cup. "So, I dug deeper into the phone logs and that brand's staff directory. Grayson is indeed short for Grayson Mitchell, 39, the brand's senior marketing strategist. He's apparently close to Brian, oversaw some questionable promotional deals, and was at these after-parties regularly." Stephen nodded grimly. "Figures. I recognized him in the hot tub footage with Chelsea," Todd typed, pulling up a screen. "Take a look. The text patterns, frequent late-night messages between Chelsea's phone and Grayson's, typically emojis or cryptic references like pool time. Then, about half of them mention B, likely Brian. They talk about B can't wait to see you, or B's busy, but will join soon. It's like a schedule for group liaisons, man." Stephen felt his stomach twist. "So it's definitely a repeated arrangement, more than a fling. Possibly a group hooking up regularly." Todd scrolled further. "Worse, in the last month, there are references to some sort of hush-hush gatherings in a VIP lounge at various hotels, not just Cloud Lux. I suspect it's an ongoing affair." Stephen's jaw clenched. "And she told me it was just late nights at the office." "They must have thought I was clueless." Todd cleared his throat. "Also got a tip from my buddy who follows business scandal blogs. There's chatter that Brian's brand is under financial strain. Maybe some questionable investor deals. If that goes public, the company's stock and image tank. Maybe they're blowing off steam with these decadent parties or trying to sweeten potential investors with, well, entertainment." A flash of revulsion crossed Stephen's face. "So they use employees like Chelsea for these twisted amusements?" Todd shrugged. "Could be. Or maybe it's just an internal ring of creeps. Either way, it's vile." Stephen rubbed his temples. "I want them all exposed. But first, my divorce and personal justice. Ms. Delgado's serving them with an additional lawsuit possibility alienation of affection. Brian's meltdown might come sooner than later." Todd gave a crooked grin. "That meltdown is what I'm hoping for. We'll document everything, break them. Then you walk away the victor." Stephen's phone buzzed a text from Ms. Delgado. "We have a scheduling date for your divorce hearing. The judge wants to see if a temporary arrangement can be set." He typed back, "Thanks. Let me know the details." Then turned to Todd. "The hearing's coming up soon. Another step forward." Todd nodded. "You sure you're okay, man? This is heavy." Stephen exhaled. "I'm pissed, Todd, but I'm staying focused. She cheated, lied, humiliated me. I won't let her off easy." He paused, swirling the coffee. "I appreciate your help. Couldn't have done it without you." Todd clapped him on the shoulder. "Anytime. Let's keep going." The day proceeded with a swirl of tasks. Stephen compiled financial records Ms. Delgado requested, clarifying his separate assets from before the marriage. He wanted to ensure Chelsea couldn't claim half of everything. Their joint account had moderate savings, but he'd already withdrawn a portion to a new personal account, per Delgado's advice. Around noon, an unknown number called. Stephen answered, half expecting more drama. A woman's voice crackled through, "Hello, Stephen. This is Fiona." She sounded nervous. I'm at lunch break. Just wanted to let you know Brian is raging around the office saying you're a traitor. He's threatening to sue you for defamation if you mention the jacuzzi or anything. He's also furious that you served the divorce complaint at the office. He says it tarnishes the brand's image. Stephen barked a short laugh. Let him threaten. I have evidence of him hooking up with my wife. If he wants a public fight, bring it on. Fiona paused, voice hushed. Honestly, the vibe here is toxic. People are whispering about how Brian might be paying hush money to keep certain staff quiet. He's spooked by your attorney's approach. Just watch out. He's a powerful guy with an ego. Stephen clenched his teeth. Thanks for the warning, but I'm not backing down. Late afternoon, Ms. Delgado emailed him the official motion for a hearing on spousal support and property division. In it, she argued that due to egregious adultery, Chelsea should receive minimal or no spousal support, and Stephen should retain the condo plus his personal assets. Ms. Delgado wrote a note. If we prove her affair with multiple partners from the workplace, the judge is likely to side with us. Keep the video and phone logs ready. Stephen's satisfaction grew. He decided to do a quick check on the condo itself, ensuring the mortgage was fully in his name. He'd refinanced a year ago, though. Possibly Chelsea's name was still on some documents. Delgado would rectify that in court. By evening, the condo felt emptier than ever. Chelsea's presence lingered in small ways. A mug with her lipstick stain, a half-empty perfume bottle in the bathroom. Stephen gathered more of her personal items, placing them in boxes to deliver to her eventually. The anger flared anew each time he saw a reminder of her. He flicked on the TV for background noise, mind drifting. A local news snippet mentioned Brian's brand, Allegra Couture, unveiling a new campaign soon. The anchor said the brand's CEO, Brian Dawson, was rumored to be dealing with internal controversies. Stephen smirked. If only the public knew the half of it. Soon, they might. His phone rang Chelsea. He debated ignoring it, but a surge of curiosity made him pick up. Yes? Her voice trembled. Stephen, please, we can talk. I'm staying at a friend's. I can't believe you're divorcing me so fast. I want to fix it. He inhaled sharply. You fix an entire group affair and months of lies? Don't insult me. She sobbed quietly. It wasn't all a group thing. It started small, I guess I got swept up. But I love you. I never intended to hurt you this badly. He felt a flash of pain, but kept resolute. Stop saying you love me. If you did, you wouldn't have done it repeatedly. I have no illusions left, Chelsea. She whispered, I'm so sorry. Then, after a pause, what if I resign from Allegra Couture? Cut off Brian and Grayson. Would you reconsider? Stephen's voice shook with bitterness. You think quitting your job erases the betrayal? No, I'm done. Discuss it with my lawyer. He hung up, her tearful protest cut short. That night, Stephen found himself restless. He decided to get some fresh air, strolling the city streets near the condo. Neon signs glowed, traffic hummed. His mind replayed the last conversation with Chelsea. She seemed genuinely desperate, yet her desperation came only after she was caught. He pushed aside any pity. She'd displayed zero loyalty. She made her bed, now she'll face the consequences. He considered the upcoming days. Ms. Delgado would serve official notice to Brian and Grayson, naming them as correspondents in the alienation lawsuit if the state's laws allowed it. If so, that meant a big public scandal for Allegra Couture. He almost felt satisfied imagining Brian's meltdown. Let the brand's stakeholders see the CEO's true face. On returning home, he scrolled for any new updates from Todd. Todd had compiled further evidence, some public event pictures, showing Chelsea, Brian, and Grayson in suspicious closeness. The more proof they stacked, the less room Chelsea and her cohorts had to deny it. Next morning, Ms. Delgado phoned early. "Good news, Stephen. We can proceed with an additional suit against Brian personally for alienation of affection. Our state permits it under certain conditions. If he tries to hamper the divorce or spread false claims about you, we'll drop that bomb." Stephen felt a small wave of triumph. "Yes, let's do it. That might pressure him to back off." Delgado added, "He's already reacting. I got a call from his attorney last night calling our approach slanderous. I told them we have footage, phone logs. They got quiet." Stephen let out a tense laugh. "Perfect," Delgado concluded. "We'll finalize the filing today. Also expect your hearing date soon for a preliminary ruling on asset division and spousal support. Chelsea might appear with her own lawyer. Don't be swayed by tears." He grimaced. "I won't." That afternoon, Todd swung by again with an update. "So, big move. The process server tried delivering the additional lawsuit docs at Brian's office, but apparently he's out of office indefinitely. Word is, HR's in panic mode. Some employees say he's hiding. Maybe some scandal is about to break internally." Stephen nodded. "He can hide all he wants. The courts will find him eventually." He paused, sipping water. "How about Grayson?" Todd shrugged. "No official service on him yet, but Ms. Delgado can label him John Doe 1 if needed. She might do it if we see it helps. The main point is to crush Chelsea's claims in the divorce." Stephen's eyes hardened. "Yes, that's the priority." With that, the stage was set for a legal war. Stephen armed with a cunning attorney, loads of evidence, and zero tolerance left for the betrayal that had upended his life. Chapter 6. Stephen paced his living room, the walls echoing every footstep. A week had passed since Ms. Delgado served notice to Brian about the alienation of affection claim. The brand's corporate PR machine evidently went into crisis mode. There were rumors swirling on social media about the CEO's inappropriate relationships, an alleged meltdown at a recent meeting, and potential investor pullouts. Meanwhile, Chelsea had reached out multiple times, sobbing about losing her job soon if this continued. Stephen coldly replied that it wasn't his concern. She made her choices. Let her face the consequences. He stood by the window, scanning the city skyline. A text popped in from Fiona. "Brian's more erratic by the day. He's cursing your name. Also, HR is investigating pool parties. They found footage from security cams super incriminating." Stephen exhaled. The meltdown was well underway. Around midday, Ms. Delgado called with an urgent tone. "Stephen, new developments. We discovered additional messages between Brian and Chelsea discussing you by name stuff about how to keep you from interfering. This is gold for the divorce case. Possibly more motives for emotional distress claims." Stephen's heart pounded. "Where'd that come from?" "A colleague in the brand's IT department leaked them, presumably outraged by Brian's hypocrisy. They forwarded them to me anonymously. Todd might have had a hand in it, or a sympathetic staffer. Either way, it's official. Brian basically told Chelsea to lie about you being controlling, to paint you as an unsupportive spouse if you found out." Delgado paused. "They considered defaming your character. That's extremely good for our side." Stephen's anger flared. "So they plotted to gaslight me if I confronted them. Perfect. Let's use it." "Indeed. I'll incorporate it into our complaint." That evening, while finalizing some work for his software security clients, Stephen heard a loud pounding on his condo door, angry, forceful. He stood, heart racing. Could it be Brian? He approached cautiously, phone in hand, ready to dial the cops. Peering through the peephole, he saw a figure he recognized. Brian himself, face contorted with rage. "Stephen, open up, don't be a coward," Brian's muffled voice echoed. Stephen felt a surge of adrenaline. Perfect. He's walking into a trap. Ms. Delgado had already advised that if Brian harassed or threatened him physically, they could escalate to a restraining order. He quietly hit record on his phone's camera, stepping back, calling out, "Leave! Brian! You're trespassing!" Brian cursed. "You're trying to ruin me with these lawsuits. Come out and face me like a man." Stephen dialed 911 with his free hand, keeping the phone's mic near the door so it captured Brian's rant. The operator answered, and Stephen said calmly, "I have an intruder threatening me at my home. He's pounding on my door, refusing to leave." He gave the address. He heard Brian kicking the door, shouting, "You think you can blackmail me, you worthless geek? I'll bury you in court, Stephen calmly told the operator, "You hear that? He's threatening me." The operator confirmed police were en route. Within minutes, sirens wailed. Brian's rant abruptly quieted, followed by knocks from uniformed officers. Through the peephole, Stephen watched them pin Brian against the wall, demanding he keep his hands visible. When the police knocked, Stephen opened the door. One officer questioned him while another cuffed Brian. Brian spat, "He's lying! He's extorting me!" The officer asked Stephen what happened. Stephen calmly explained, "I have recorded audio. He tried breaking in, threatened me." He replayed a snippet of Brian's profane outburst. The cops eyed each other, unimpressed with Brian's meltdown. They escorted Brian down the hallway, ignoring his sputtered claims that Stephen was ruining his brand. The officer told Stephen they'd file a report, and Stephen should consider a restraining order if he felt unsafe. He confirmed he would, and thanked them. He watched from the doorway as Brian was hustled into a squad car, face red with fury. Possibly he'd make bail quickly, but the optics were terrible. Neighbors peeking out, cameras in the hallway capturing everything. Another nail in his coffin, Stephen thought, adrenaline coursing. An hour later, Ms. Delgado arrived, having rushed over upon hearing the incident. She wore a determined expression. "Perfect. We have him on record violating personal boundaries, hurling threats. I'll file a protective order first thing tomorrow." Stephen nodded, handing over the phone's audio. "He basically admitted he sees me as an obstacle. That's on tape." Delgado gave a thin smile. "This will look awful in court. The judge will see how unhinged he is. Great for your side." They sat at the dining table, going over details. Delgado explained that if the protective order was granted, Brian could face jail time if he tried approaching again. Meanwhile, it further bolstered Stephen's divorce claim that the environment around Chelsea's affair was hostile, manipulative, and dangerous. Stephen, despite the stress, felt a wave of satisfaction. He's unraveling, which is exactly what I want. Let him show his true colors. Later that night, Todd dropped by bringing a pizza and a grin. "Heard about Brian's meltdown? Had to celebrate a bit," he joked, flipping open the pizza box. Stephen gave a weary chuckle. "It's insane, man. The brand's CEO is attacking me at my own door. I guess he's desperate." They ate slices in companionable silence for a moment. Then Todd said, "I ran more data on the brand's finances. Found rumors of money laundering with some foreign distributors. If that's real, and Ms. Delgado wants to push it, we could tip off the feds." Stephen's eyes flickered with interest. That might put the final nail in the coffin for Brian's label. But let's let Delgado strategize. I just want to finalize my divorce and watch him face consequences for messing with my marriage. The next day, Ms. Delgado filed for a temporary restraining order. The court, seeing the police report and Stephen's recorded audio, granted it swiftly. Brian was barred from approaching Stephen or contacting him outside of official legal channels. If he violated it, no bail next time. Word spread among the brand's employees that the CEO had been arrested after confronting a jilted husband. The scandal ballooned. Fiona messaged Stephen, "HR is freaking out. We all heard about Brian's arrest. He's on leave now. Stephen felt a twinge of dark pleasure. The man who had disrespected him so brazenly was reaping the whirlwind. Chelsea, for her part, tried calling Stephen again, but he refused to pick up. She left voicemails, some tearful, some angry. Ms. Delgado advised him to archive them, but not respond. She'll likely attempt emotional manipulation. Don't give her an opening. Stephen complied, focusing on building his legal posture. The divorce hearing date loomed in the near future, where the judge would consider interim spousal support, living arrangements, and whether Stephen could keep the condo exclusively. Meanwhile, Ms. Delgado unveiled a plan to freeze certain marital assets so Chelsea couldn't drain them if she was in financial trouble. That required some legal filings, which Delgado prepared swiftly. By the end of the week, Stephen stood on his condo's balcony again, city lights blinking below. The path he'd embarked upon was tumultuous, but each new confrontation pushed him closer to vengeance. Chelsea's pleas, Brian's meltdown, the brand's potential downfall, it all served to reinforce that the woman he once adored had destroyed their marriage. He sipped a glass of water, reflecting on how quickly life had changed. A month ago, he was merely suspicious. Now he was systematically dismantling the illusions that had caged him. Todd's data hunts, Ms. Delgado's legal onslaught, his own unwavering resolve, they formed a trifecta that spelled doom for Chelsea's attempts to salvage anything. He closed his eyes, recalling the laughter they once shared, the plans for a family. All gone, replaced by bitterness and a calculated thirst for justice. He refused to let sadness overtake him. They tried to humiliate me, but I'll emerge stronger. In the hush of the night, he whispered, "Soon it'll be over, and I'll be free." Chapter 7. 2 weeks later, the swirling rumors around Allegra Couture erupted into full-blown crisis. Multiple gossip blogs published leaked emails implicating Brian in questionable financial dealings, referencing hush money paid to certain special contractors for entertainment services. The word scandal flashed across media sites. Investors began pulling out, the brand's stock value plummeted, and Brian, already on forced leave, was rumored to be on the brink of permanent dismissal by the board. From his vantage point, Stephen tracked these developments with mild fascination. Each day, new revelations surfaced about the label's toxic culture, how top execs, including Brian and Grayson, fostered a work environment rife with sexual improprieties and lavish parties. Anonymous employees confirmed after-hours VIP gatherings. Some even named Chelsea as a frequent participant. Though her name wasn't widely publicized yet, the risk was there. Meanwhile, Ms. Delgado used this as leverage. If Brian's indicted for fraud, we can push the divorce court to see him as a malicious third party. That bolsters your alienation of affection claim if we choose to press it fully, she said over a phone call. Stephen nodded, fully supportive. At home, Stephen continued methodically removing Chelsea's personal effects, boxing them up. He labeled them and stacked them in a corner ready for her to retrieve. A sense of finality accompanied each item clothes she once wore during date nights. Photos from trips. He paused on a framed wedding picture, the two of them beaming under an arch of flowers. A painful lump formed in his throat, but he set it firmly in the box, no illusions left. She shattered those vows in that hot tub. A sudden knock startled him. He checked the peephole Chelsea. She must have used the building's intercom or snuck past the doorman somehow. He considered ignoring her, but decided to see if she was calmer. He opened the door, stepping back with arms crossed. She stood there in casual clothes, eyes puffy. "Stephen, can we talk, please?" He held the door half-closed. "What do you want? I told you go through my lawyer." She took a shaky breath. "I lost my job," she said, voice quivering. "They fired me after HR found out about the partying. I have nowhere to go except a friend's couch. I just want to talk about the divorce. Maybe we can settle without going to court." Stephen regarded her coldly. "You only want that because you realize the brand's collapsing, and you have no leverage. Ms. Delgado says we're pushing forward. A judge can see your multiple adulteries. I'll get most assets." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I can't change what happened, but can we at least handle it privately? I'll accept a fair split, just not total ruin." His anger flared. "Fair? After you humiliated me in group sex fiascos? After you planned to lie about me being controlling? Spare me. The court will decide." She sniffled, glancing at the labeled boxes behind him. "Can I at least get some of my stuff now?" He opened the door slightly. "It's in those boxes. Take them and go." She edged inside, collecting the boxes. Her hands trembled. Glancing at the half-empty walls, she murmured, "Remember when we decorated this place together? We were so happy. I hate that it ended like this." Stephen's chest twisted. "You ended it, Chelsea. The second you jumped in that hot tub with your boss. Actually, months before that, apparently." She wept. "I wish I could undo it." He said nothing, just guided her to the door with the boxes. "Goodbye," he muttered. She hesitated, tears rolling down her cheeks, then trudged out. He closed the door, leaning against it with a churning mix of sorrow and resolve. That night, Todd dropped by with dinner, a sign of solidarity. They ate Thai takeout on the living room floor, discussing the meltdown at Allegra Couture. Todd updated him. Brian tried returning to the office. The board refused him entry. Security turned him away. Meanwhile, rumors say Grayson might resign to avoid blowback. The brand might rename, reorganize, or go bankrupt. Stephen gave a grim smirk. "Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. I do pity the innocent employees, though. Many folks likely had no clue about the corruption." Todd nodded. "True, but their leadership was rotten. Let them face the consequences." Stephen then shared about Chelsea's visit. "She's desperate for a private settlement. Probably wants hush-hush, so the full extent of her involvement doesn't go public." Todd raised a brow. "You going to let her off easy?" Stephen stared at the half-eaten noodles, then shook his head. "No. She betrayed me. Let the court handle it." Days ticked by, each one bringing them closer to the scheduled divorce hearing. Ms. Delgado finalized depositions. Stephen would present the hot tub video, phone logs, and a short statement about the mental anguish. Chelsea presumably would try to mitigate the damage, maybe claiming she was coerced or influenced. One afternoon, Fiona called Stephen again, her voice hushed. Brian's meltdown got worse. He threatened some staff, called them traitors. HR forced him to sign a resignation letter. The brand is naming an interim CEO. Everyone's whispering about your lawsuit. Brian's so furious, he might do something drastic. Stephen's gut twisted. Let him try. I have a protective order. He'll land in jail if he violates it again. Fiona sighed. Just be careful. Sure enough, that very evening, Brian attempted to call Stephen from a blocked number. Ms. Delgado had told him to record any such call. He answered. Brian's enraged voice barked, "You destroyed my career, you bastard! I hope you're satisfied. Allegra's done. Chelsea's a wreck. But you'll pay for this in court." Stephen recorded it on speaker, calm, but biting. You have yourself to blame. You seduced a married woman repeatedly. You misused your position. Now you face the consequences. Brian spewed curses, then threatened, If you show that video in court, I'll bury you under defamation claims. Don't test me. Stephen responded icily, We'll let the judge decide. Don't contact me again. He ended the call, heart-pounding. Another piece of evidence for Delgado. The next day, Ms. Delgado, triumphant, listened to the recorded call. Perfect. Another threat. This cements the narrative that he's harassing you. We'll request an update to the restraining order. Also helps your alienation claim. She shook her head. He's basically handing us bullets to use against him. Stephen felt relief. I want the judge to see the real Brian, angry, manipulative, unscrupulous. Delgado nodded. Exactly. Meanwhile, I've prepared your statement for the hearing. You'll describe how Chelsea's actions, orchestrated by Brian, humiliated you. We'll show the jacuzzi footage discreetly, only the relevant portion that shows clear infidelity. The judge doesn't need explicit details, just enough to confirm wrongdoing. Stephen braced himself. All right, let's finalize it. 2 days before the hearing, Todd uncovered a final bombshell. Company emails indicating that Brian had paid for numerous private suites at upscale hotels. The recipients included Chelsea and Grayson, scheduled on nights matching the phone logs. This placed Chelsea even deeper in the group's arrangement. Todd forwarded everything to Ms. Delgado. Delgado phoned Stephen, clearly excited. This is the smoking gun. We can prove repeated rendezvous, often labeled as client entertainment in expense reports. Chelsea knowingly participated. That nails the adultery timeline. The judge will have no doubt. Stephen almost felt a pang of pity, thinking how Chelsea must be panicking, jobless, incriminated by evidence. But he hardened. She chose betrayal. She'd reap the results. Finally, the day arrived for the first major hearing, a preliminary ruling on spousal support, living arrangements, and how to handle contested assets until the full divorce trial. Stephen, dressed in a crisp suit, phone loaded with evidence, mind steeled for confrontation. He walked into the courthouse, Ms. Delgado at his side, a sense of finality thrumming in his veins. This was it. A direct confrontation before a judge, with Chelsea present, maybe even Brian. He prepared to unveil the depth of her betrayal, to watch her attempts at defense crumble under the mountain of proof. No mercy, he told himself. No forgiveness for what they did. Chapter 8. The courthouse corridor buzzed with subdued chatter. Stephen Hawthorne stood outside the assigned courtroom, Ms. Delgado reviewing last-minute details with him. He took a breath, noticing the stale institutional smell of the polished floors, the hum of air conditioning. This hearing wasn't the final trial. Rather, it was a preliminary session where the judge would decide interim measures like spousal support, property use, and any immediate injunctions. But it would set the tone. He glanced around, expecting to see Chelsea. Instead, he spotted her lawyer, first an anxious-looking younger woman. Next, behind her, Chelsea emerged. She wore a conservative black blouse and slacks, hair pulled back. She looked pale, eyes flitting about until they locked on Stephen. She clutched a folder, posture tense. He forced himself not to feel pity. A bailiff called out, "Hawthorne vs. Hawthorne, preliminary hearing, all parties inside." They entered the courtroom, a modest space with wooden pews for observers. Ms. Delgado directed Stephen to a seat at the petitioner's table. Across the aisle sat Chelsea and her attorney. The judge, a stern-faced woman with silver-framed glasses, ascended the bench. After formalities, Ms. Delgado introduced the matter. Your Honor, we represent Stephen Hawthorne, seeking an at-fault divorce, citing multiple adulteries by Chelsea Hawthorne with co-workers, including her boss, Brian Dawson. We have direct video evidence, phone logs, and other supporting data. Chelsea's lawyer responded, trying to appear composed. Your Honor, my client admits to inappropriate conduct but contests some aspects. She denies the extent of the alleged group scenario. We request a private settlement if possible, plus a fair division of assets and minimal spousal support. The judge nodded, scanning the initial briefs. I see. Let's address the immediate issues: spousal support and property possession. Ms. Delgado rose, crisp and direct. We have evidence Ms. Hawthorne committed repeated infidelity, humiliating our client. This not only shatters the marital bond, it also inflicted emotional distress. Given the state's laws, we argue for no spousal support. Mr. Hawthorne also requests exclusive occupancy of the marital condo, as Ms. Hawthorne's presence is untenable. Chelsea's lawyer sighed, standing. My client acknowledges an affair but claims extenuating circumstances, pressures from her workplace. She's now unemployed, has limited funds, needs some financial stability. Also, she parted from the condo at Mr. Hawthorne's demand. She seeks either partial support or a share of assets. The judge tilted her head. Ms. Hawthorne, do you confirm you're not living at the condo? Chelsea cleared her throat. Yes, Your Honor. Stephen forced me out. Ms. Delgado interjected. He asked her to leave after discovering her ongoing affair. He provided temporary accommodations for her belongings. She is not homeless by any means. We have reason to believe she's staying with friends. The judge reviewed the exhibit. Ms. Delgado offered a brief snippet of the jacuzzi footage. The bailiff set up a laptop for the judge's eyes only. The courtroom was silent as the judge watched a minute or so, then removed her glasses with a sigh. She fixed her gaze on Chelsea. This is quite explicit evidence. You're seen in close contact with at least 2 individuals. This is beyond a casual affair. Chelsea's lawyer looked flustered, stammering, Your Honor, we do not deny the jacuzzi event, but Ms. Hawthorne contends she was under duress from her boss's instructions. This was a toxic environment. She regrets. Ms. Delgado cut in. Even if that were so, it doesn't negate repeated acts of adultery over months, as phone logs show. She gestured to a thick binder. Additionally, text messages reveal Ms. Hawthorne conspired with these men to keep Mr. Hawthorne in the dark, referencing him as an obstacle. We have reason to believe they also planned defamation if he confronted them. The judge's expression hardened. She looked at Chelsea. Is that true? Chelsea's voice shook. Some messages existed, yes, but I was caught up in the brand's dysfunctional culture. I never meant to harm Stephen. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I was manipulated. The judge inhaled, then addressed Ms. Delgado. For now, we're deciding if Ms. Hawthorne's conduct is sufficient to deny spousal support. The state does allow fault-based denial if the adultery is proven substantial and egregious. This appears so. She scribbled notes, then turned to Chelsea's attorney. Anything else to mitigate Ms. Hawthorne's accountability? Chelsea's lawyer tried valiantly. She's now jobless and without stable income. We ask for temporary support to cover basic living expenses. Ms. Delgado frowned. She can find work elsewhere. Why should my client fund the lifestyle of a woman who actively cheated with multiple partners? The law is on our side regarding adultery. After hearing arguments, the judge announced a short recess to review. In the corridor, Stephen caught a glimpse of Chelsea leaning against a wall, wiping tears as her lawyer whispered something. Ms. Delgado smirked slightly. We're in a strong position. The judge's face said it all. Within 15 minutes, they reconvened. The judge declared her interim ruling. Based on the evidence presented and the state's statutory guidelines, Ms. Hawthorne's admitted adultery precludes spousal support at this stage. Mr. Hawthorne shall retain exclusive occupancy of the condo. Ms. Hawthorne is to remove any remaining personal items by arrangement within a supervised context if needed. Chelsea's lawyer sighed heavily. Chelsea, biting her lip, stifled a sob. The judge then addressed the emotional distress claim. Mr. Hawthorne's counsel hinted at seeking damages for alienation of affection by a third party, Brian Dawson. That's a separate matter. However, Ms. Hawthorne's infidelity factor is well established. If Mr. Hawthorne chooses to finalize that claim, the court will not hinder it." Ms. Delgado nodded. "We are indeed filing that suit separately, Your Honor. Thank you." The judge hammered the gavel softly. "This concludes the preliminary hearing. Final divorce proceedings will follow. Court adjourned." Stephen felt a wave of triumph. The immediate question of spousal support was resolved in his favor. None. He exhaled, turning to Ms. Delgado with gratitude. "We did it." She patted his shoulder. "Yes, the final trial for property division is still ahead, but this sets a strong precedent. Let's keep the momentum. I'll finalize the alienation suit next." Across the aisle, Chelsea stood teary-eyed, glaring at Stephen. She didn't approach him, though. Her lawyer whisked her away, presumably to plan next steps. Todd, who'd come to watch silently, gave Stephen a thumbs-up from the back row, a proud grin on his face. Outside, the press or onlookers were minimal. This wasn't a high-profile day. Still, a couple curious stares followed them as Ms. Delgado and Stephen exited. Todd joined them, and they all walked to the parking lot. Delgado said, "Chelsea might try to negotiate a private settlement, but you hold all the cards. She can't threaten spousal support or half the condo anymore." Stephen nodded. "Let her scramble. I want to see if Brian tries another stunt." Todd chimed in. "You think he'll break the restraining order again?" "He's erratic." Delgado pursed her lips. "If he does, it's jail time. It's only a matter of time before the brand's meltdown hits him financially, too." That evening, alone in the condo, Stephen toasted his small victory with a glass of whiskey. The living room felt a bit more peaceful, no looming dread of spousal demands, no illusions that she might walk through the door. Instead, a sense of calm, like a storm slowly passing. Of course, the final property trial remained, but the judge's harsh stance on adultery suggested Stephen would likely keep the majority of their joint assets. Ms. Delgado was confident they'd settle or triumph in court. As he sipped, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. He'd come so far from the suspicious nights, the humiliating jacuzzi revelation. Now he was armed with legal power, unstoppable. He'd see this through Chelsea. Brian, Grayson, all who conspired to humiliate him would face the final reckoning soon. Chapter 9. The Fall of Allegra Couture. The fashion brand, where Chelsea had worked and Brian had reigned as CEO, seemed to accelerate with each passing day. News outlets pounced on rumors of suspicious financial practices, insider tips about hush money for illicit pool parties, and the explosive meltdown of its disgraced leader, Brian Dawson. Meanwhile, Chelsea's complicity in that environment, as well as her multiple infidelities, became an open secret within certain industry circles. Stephen Hawthorne tracked it all with a detached fascination. He wasn't gloating much, though a grim satisfaction lingered whenever he read how investors were pulling out, or how new allegations surfaced about the brand's unethical marketing stunts. He had more pressing matters. His final divorce trial date loomed in about a month, and Ms. Delgado was preparing a lethal onslaught of evidence that would all but guarantee Stephen's victory. In Stephen's condo, newly reclaimed of Chelsea's presence, he'd begun rearranging furniture, repainting a spare bedroom into a fresh ocean blue office for himself. Each brush stroke felt cathartic, a symbolic reassertion of his space, free from the toxic memories of Chelsea's betrayal. Todd often visited, bringing updates on both the brand meltdown and the phone logs. Late one afternoon, Todd handed him a USB drive. "Found more archived messages from the brand's internal servers. Someone in IT gave me a dump. Brian and Grayson basically orchestrated these private nights at fancy hotels for months, roping in staff, including your ex." Todd's expression soured at the mention of your ex. "They plan to keep you totally clueless." Stephen accepted the drive, nodding calmly. "We'll let Ms. Delgado see if it's relevant. I'm sure it'll further bury them." Chelsea, on the other hand, found herself jobless, reliant on friends or acquaintances for a couch to sleep on. The brand had cut her off completely once HR discovered her deep involvement in the scandal. She phoned Stephen multiple times, oscillating between contrite apologies and outraged accusations that he ruined her life. He rarely answered, and if he did, it was only to glean new intel. One evening, she left a voicemail weeping about how Brian's disowned me, Grayson vanished, the label blacklisted me from references, concluding with a plaintive, "I still love you, we can fix this." Stephen deleted it, unmoved. She'd made her bed. Meanwhile, Ms. Delgado informed him that Chelsea had no real legal leg to stand on. Her affairs were thoroughly documented, and the judge at the preliminary hearing had already denied spousal support. The final trial would mainly address property division, plus any emotional distress claims Stephen pursued. With all the evidence, Ms. Delgado expected a near-complete win for Stephen. On top of the divorce, Ms. Delgado had filed the alienation of affection suit against Brian personally. If the state recognized such claims, they could demand financial damages from him for intentionally undermining Stephen's marriage. In a phone call with Stephen, Delgado explained the significance. "We might not always get a huge payoff from such suits, but the threat alone can push for a settlement. And Brian's meltdown is working in our favor. He's basically handing us proof of malicious intent." Stephen, determined, told her, "Let's push it as far as we can. He destroyed my marriage, humiliated me publicly. He should pay." Delgado agreed. Word soon leaked that Brian's attorneys were scrambling to contain this new lawsuit. Rumor said Brian's defense was to claim consensual open marriage, or Stephen's knowledge of the affair, which Delgado called ridiculous lies. She prepared a thorough rebuttal, backing it with the phone logs, the jacuzzi video, and a string of text messages where Brian explicitly told Chelsea to keep Stephen unaware. One afternoon, as Stephen was finishing a software security project for a corporate client, an unknown number called. He answered out of habit, voice professional. A hesitant male voice said, "Stephen, hey, it's Grayson. Don't hang up." Stephen's pulse spiked. He'd never spoken to Grayson directly, only gleaned info about him from phone logs and the video. "You have about 10 seconds, Stephen said icily, "before I hang up." Grayson sighed. "Look, man, I'm not your enemy. Brian dragged me into this. He set up the after-parties, used staff for, favors. I got caught up. I know you blame me, maybe rightfully so, but I'm done with Brian. I want out of this mess." Stephen's anger flared. "You joined him in hooking up with my wife. That's not just being dragged in. Don't play the victim." A pause. "Fine. I participated. But I didn't realize how deep the brand's corruption ran. Listen, if I can help your lawsuit testify about how Brian coerced staff, including Chelsea, would that help you lighten any potential claims against me?" Stephen frowned. "I'll talk to my attorney, but I'm not making promises. You hurt me deeply." Grayson's tone turned pleading. "I get it. But I can reveal emails, recorded convos. Brian pressured employees to keep quiet or lose their jobs. Chelsea was under that pressure too, though she obviously went along willingly. This might ensure you win big in your alienation suit." Stephen inhaled. "Email me specifics. If it's real, Ms. Delgado will consider it." He ended the call, unsettled by Grayson's attempt at self-preservation. That evening, Stephen relayed Grayson's call to Todd, who listened with a snort. He's only saving his own skin, but it could be valuable. If Grayson testifies that Brian manipulated staff into sexual situations, that's huge. It shows a pattern of malicious intent against you. Stephen nodded, swirling a glass of water. "I hate giving him any leniency, though. He's part of what broke my marriage." Todd shrugged. "Sometimes you gotta strike deals to get the bigger fish. Let Ms. Delgado handle it. If Grayson's testimony is essential, we can use him as a witness. You still get to watch Brian burn." Stephen sighed, torn between rage at Grayson and the pragmatic approach. "All right, I'll let Delgado weigh the pros and cons." A few days later, Ms. Delgado notified Stephen that Brian had shockingly attempted to confront him again, this time at Ms. Delgado's office. The firm's security turned him away, but he left a tirade of expletives claiming Stephen was extorting me for money. Delgado promptly filed a motion citing Brian's repeated harassment, urging the judge to tighten the restraining order. The judge agreed, issuing a no-contact beyond official court channels. The next morning, a local business paper ran a piece titled "Allegra Couture's Ex-CEO in Legal Crosshairs, Harassment, and Lawsuits Pile Up." The article referenced an unnamed husband whose spouse was entangled in indiscreet after-hours encounters. Observers guessed it was Stephen. A news blogger emailed Stephen for comment. He declined. But inside, he felt a fierce satisfaction. Brian's empire crumbles further. Around this time, Chelsea tried one final direct approach, showing up outside Stephen's condo building on a Saturday morning. The doorman alerted Stephen that a distraught woman named Ms. Hawthorne was pleading to be let up. Stephen told the doorman to refuse entry, but he decided to step downstairs to see what she wanted, if only to diffuse the situation. She stood in the lobby, eyes red, wearing a wrinkled blouse. "Stephen, please," she said hoarsely. "Just 5 minutes." He nodded once, leading her to a quiet corner of the lobby. "What is it?" She twisted her hands together. "I'm at rock bottom. No job, no money, no place stable. I can't believe how fast everything collapsed. I never thought Brian would ditch me, that Grayson would vanish, that you'd go this far with the lawsuit." Stephen's expression remained impassive. "You expected me to do nothing? Accept your group fling as normal?" Her tears welled. "No, I guess I was stupid. I just want to see if we can settle the divorce quietly. I'll concede the condo to you. Keep some small assets, sign an NDA if you want." She swallowed hard. "Please spare me from more public shame." He folded his arms. "You didn't spare me from public shame when you flaunted your affair at that hotel. Why should I care about your reputation now?" Chelsea sobbed, drawing stares from passers-by. "I regret it all, Stephen. I do. I made a terrible mistake. I got swept up in Brian's power, the brand's glamorous image. I never intended to push you away so completely." Stephen's voice trembled with lingering anger. "Yet you kept doing it for months, lying to me repeatedly. That's not an accidental slip, it's a pattern." She nodded, tears spilling. "Yes, I can't change that, but the brand's meltdown taught me a harsh lesson. Brian's a monster. He manipulated me, others. I was an idiot to let him. But I'm begging you, have mercy in the final settlement. I'll vanish from your life." Stephen exhaled, battling a flicker of pity. She was indeed broken now. "Ms. Delgado handles all negotiations. Talk to her. I won't promise mercy, though. You destroyed our marriage and humiliated me in ways you can't fathom. The judge will see the evidence." Chelsea's tears flowed. "I understand." She stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "I'm sorry." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked out of the lobby, shoulders shaking. When Stephen informed Ms. Delgado about Chelsea's lobby plea, Delgado responded with professional calm. "She's desperate. She knows the final trial is soon, and the judge likely won't be lenient after all we've uncovered. She might propose a private settlement, maybe a meager fraction of assets, in exchange for you not revealing more details publicly." Stephen frowned. "I'm not inclined to hush it up. Let the record show the full truth." Delgado nodded. "I agree. Still, I'll entertain any formal settlement offer she makes. But given your advantage, We can press for near 100% property retention. She might get a token portion, or the judge might award her next to nothing. Stephen felt a wave of grim satisfaction. That's exactly what I want. With each passing day, the countdown to the final divorce trial weighed on Stephen's mind. Ms. Delgado had everything meticulously prepared. The phone logs, text messages, hotel receipts, the jacuzzi video excerpt, censored enough for court decorum, and testimonies from Todd, possibly from Fiona. Even Grayson had quietly signaled he'd be willing to testify about how the affair started and how Brian encouraged it. Ms. Delgado weighed whether they truly needed him or if the existing evidence sufficed. Meanwhile, Brian faced mounting legal troubles. Money laundering allegations emerged, plus harassment suits from other employees. The man who had brazenly seduced Chelsea was now cornered on all fronts. Grayson, attempting to dodge the brand's meltdown, offered more incriminating data to Ms. Delgado in exchange for not being named in the alienation suit. She hadn't fully promised him immunity, but she hinted at some leeway if his testimony sealed Brian's fate. Chelsea, effectively alone and friendless, found no defenders left. Even Fiona kept her distance, telling Stephen in private that Chelsea refused to see how toxic it was until too late. The stage was set. The final trial would be the last nail in the coffin of her marriage, and from the looks of it, she'd lose big financially and socially. Stephen felt a swirl of heartbreak and vindication, forging a sense of closure. The day of reckoning awaited. Chapter 10. The morning of the final divorce trial arrived, clear and crisp. Stephen woke early, methodically donned a dark suit, his expression resolute. This was the day he'd present his full case. Blatant infidelity, emotional distress, and unwavering proof. Once the judge made a final ruling, he'd be free of Chelsea's betrayal forever. He arrived at the courthouse with Ms. Delgado by his side. The corridors bustled, but not as heavily as the sensational murder trials that sometimes packed the place. Still, a few curious onlookers lingered, possibly intrigued by rumors of the scandalous brand meltdown or hoping to spot Brian. Stephen ignored them, following Delgado's confident stride to the assigned courtroom. Inside, he spotted Chelsea, seated at the respondent's table with her counsel. She looked hollowed out, wearing a subdued gray dress. No one else from Allegro was present. Brian, presumably, was busy defending himself in separate lawsuits or avoiding public view. Ms. Delgado cast a glance at Chelsea's side, lips curving in mild disdain. "They don't appear strong," she whispered to Stephen. He nodded. "We have all the evidence we need." The judge, a different one than the preliminary hearing, called the session to order, introducing the matter as Hawthorne versus Hawthorne, final dissolution of marriage, property distribution, fault-based claims. Ms. Delgado rose first, delivering a concise yet devastating summary. Stephen's unwavering devotion versus Chelsea's repeated adulteries. The group aspect with her boss, Brian, and co-worker Grayson. The humiliating jacuzzi video, phone logs, testimony from Todd about unambiguous text content. The emotional toll on Stephen plus the brand meltdown that indirectly tarnished his name. She concluded by requesting the judge award Stephen sole ownership of the condo and majority of assets, with no spousal support. Next, Chelsea's attorney rose, looking weary. "My client admits to poor judgment and an affair, but urges the court to consider the manipulative environment at her workplace, the controlling influence of her boss, Brian Dawson, and her current, dire financial straits. We ask for a more balanced division, plus minimal transitional support." Stephen's eyes narrowed at the mention of controlling influence. He suspected they'd push the angle that Chelsea was coerced, a victim. Ms. Delgado had a plan to counter that. Soon, Ms. Delgado called Stephen to the stand. He took the oath, settled into the witness chair, ignoring Chelsea's pained expression. The judge nodded for Ms. Delgado to begin questioning. She led him through the timeline. How he first suspected changes in Chelsea's routine, how he discovered suspicious texts from Grace Grayson, culminating in that infamous night at the Cloudlux Hotel. She then prompted him to describe the emotional impact, the heartbreak of seeing his wife intimately entangled with two men, the humiliation of repeated lies. Stephen's voice quivered slightly at times, but he maintained composure. He explained how he installed no illegal spyware, only used normal phone record checks and personal observation. He described the jacuzzi footage captured from a vantage near the pool area, clarifying the sign indicated staff and spouses allowed, so he wasn't trespassing. The judge listened intently, occasionally scribbling notes. Ms. Delgado ended by asking, "In your own words, Mr. Hawthorne, what do you seek from this court?" Stephen exhaled. "I seek a fair and lawful dissolution, no spousal support for someone who brazenly betrayed me, and the ability to move on without her claims to my property. I also want the court to acknowledge the extreme emotional harm done by her ongoing affair and group sexual activities." Chelsea's attorney rose, a young woman named Ms. Kent. She approached Stephen with carefully measured steps, adopting a sympathetic tone. "Mr. Hawthorne, while I can't excuse my client's behavior, would you agree that Brian Dawson is a powerful figure who might have coerced or pressured staff into sexual compliance?" Stephen paused, recalling how Todd's digging suggested staff were encouraged to join parties. Possibly. But from the texts, phone logs, and the jacuzzi video, Chelsea seemed more than willing. Ms. Kent pursed her lips. "People under workplace pressure can appear complicit, can't they?" Stephen kept his tone even. "Maybe. But the logs show her actively flirting, scheduling rendezvous, mocking me. That goes beyond mere pressure." She switched tactics. "Weren't you often busy with your own job, leaving Chelsea feeling neglected? Could loneliness have driven her to these acts?" Ms. Delgado objected. "Relevance, victim blaming?" The judge sustained, telling Ms. Kent to stick to the adultery specifics. Ms. Kent tried a final angle. "Would you at least concede Chelsea's remorse now, that she regrets it deeply?" Stephen's jaw tightened. "Regret after being caught, yes. That doesn't undo the betrayal." "Next, Ms." Delgado played an edited snippet of the jacuzzi footage, ensuring the court saw the relevant portion. Chelsea leaning intimately against Brian, kissing him, Grayson's hand on her waist. The camera angle was enough to identify them clearly. A hush fell over the courtroom as those images displayed on a screen near the judge's bench. Chelsea stared at the floor in shame. Then Todd, called as a witness, testified about retrieving phone logs, verifying the repeated calls at odd hours, the coded references to pool time, referencing Grayson's number. He confirmed these logs were legitimate, tied to Chelsea's phone plan. Ms. As Kent's cross-examination tried to paint Todd as an invasive hacker, but Todd insisted he only used publicly accessible phone plan data with Stephen's authorization, and the brand's internal leaks were from consenting employees. The judge accepted it. Stephen watched Chelsea flinch at each new piece of evidence. Part of him felt a pang. This was brutal, but he steeled himself. She'd orchestrated his misery for months. He refused to relent. Finally, Chelsea was called to testify in her defense. Pale and trembling, she took the oath. Her lawyer guided her gently. "Miss Hawthorne, please explain your perspective. Why did these affairs happen?" Chelsea's voice quavered. "I was lonely, stressed at work. Brian insinuated my career would benefit if I joined his exclusive gatherings. I felt pressured. Grayson introduced me to that group. It started with flirting, then escalated." She paused, tears slipping. "I knew it was wrong. I told them I had a husband, but Brian said it was harmless after-hours fun. I got addicted to the excitement, I guess. Her lawyer prompted, "Do you claim you lacked the free will to refuse?" She sobbed. "No, I could have refused, but I was afraid of losing my job, being blacklisted in PR. I was weak. I regret it so much." Ms. Delgado rose for cross-examination, drilling Chelsea on the phone logs showing her texting lewd jokes about Stephen's cluelessness, or mocking him in group chats. Chelsea tried to blame group peer pressure, but Delgado pressed, "Yet you repeatedly arranged to meet them. You never once sought help or told your husband. Isn't that true?" Chelsea lowered her gaze. "Yes, that's true." Ms. Delgado concluded. "So you consciously deceived Mr. Hawthorne, even referencing him as an obstacle in your texts with Brian. That indicates malice, not mere victimhood. Correct?" Chelsea's tears streamed. "I was stupid, yes. I own that." The judge then moved to closing arguments. Ms. Delgado succinctly reiterated how Chelsea knowingly engaged in adulterous acts over months, humiliating Stephen, further proven by text logs mocking him. She urged the court to grant Stephen the lion's share of assets, no spousal support, citing egregious fault. Chelsea's lawyer made a last-ditch plea for empathy, highlighting Chelsea's remorse and claims of workplace pressure. "She's lost her job, her social standing. We ask for a small portion of assets to help her rebuild, no more than that." The judge nodded thoughtfully, announcing she'd review the evidence and deliver a ruling the next morning. Court was adjourned for the day. Stephen stepped into the corridor, Ms. Delgado at his side. Todd, who had quietly observed the session, gave a supportive thumbs-up. The tension was heavy tomorrow. They'd learn the judge's final verdict on property division and any final spousal settlement. Chelsea, standing across the hall with her lawyer, gave Stephen a pleading look. He ignored it. Ms. Delgado calmly told him, "I'm confident we'll prevail." The judge seemed unimpressed by her sob story. He exhaled, shoulders relaxing a fraction. "Yeah, let's hope." They parted ways. That evening, Stephen tried unwinding at the condo, but nerves prickled. He paced, rethinking each piece of evidence. Could the judge be swayed by Chelsea's tears? Ms. Delgado insisted the law strongly favored the innocent spouse in blatant adultery cases, especially with such explicit proof. He had to trust the system. Unable to sleep, he typed out a personal reflection on his laptop, a cathartic journaling of the heartbreak, the betrayal, the slow transformation from clueless husband to determined avenger. By 3 a.m., he dozed off, mind swirling with hopes for final closure. Next morning, the same judge reconvened court. The tension in the air was palpable as she took the bench, flipping through papers. She began with a summary of the evidence. "We have a clear record of prolonged infidelity, documented hostility toward Mr. Hawthorne, and an overall breach of marital fidelity. Ms. Hawthorne's claim of workplace pressure doesn't negate her repeated willful involvement." She paused, then delivered the ruling. Divorce granted. The marriage is dissolved, effective immediately, with no waiting period. Property division. Stephen retains sole ownership of the condo and any major marital assets, including investments, except for a modest allowance for Chelsea's personal possessions. No spousal support. Chelsea's request for transitional support is denied due to egregious adultery and lack of mitigating factors. Legal fees. Ms. Hawthorne is responsible for her own legal fees, as her conduct created the grounds for this fault-based divorce. Chelsea stiffened, tears welling again. Her lawyer pressed lips in a thin line. Meanwhile, Ms. Delgado patted Stephen's hand, smiling triumphantly. The judge wrapped up, wishing them both a civil closure. After the gavel fell, Ms. Delgado turned to Stephen. "Congratulations. You have a near-complete victory. She gets minimal assets, no spousal support. That's about as decisive as it gets. Todd clapped Stephen on the back, murmuring, "You did it, man." Chelsea stood across the aisle, trembling. Her lawyer murmured something, and she gave a faint nod, tears streaming. Then she approached, ignoring Ms. Delgado's warning glances. Stephen tensed, but allowed her a final word. She spoke in a broken whisper. "You got everything. I understand. I hope you're satisfied. I'm truly sorry." Stephen looked at her tear-streaked face, recalling the love that once bound them. He exhaled. "I'm sorry, too, for how things ended, but you made your choices. Now live with them." She nodded, not resisting, then turned and left the courtroom, shoulders slumped in defeat. Todd watched her go, shaking his head. What a downfall. Stephen closed his eyes, letting relief wash over him. It's done. Freed from the marriage she'd destroyed, he could finally breathe. The open road to life, without her deception, lay ahead. Chapter 11. In the wake of the divorce ruling, Brian Dawson found himself facing multiple lawsuits, harassment, possible financial fraud, and Stephen's alienation of affection claim. The brand's board ousted him fully, disclaiming any ties to improprieties. The label's stock plummeted, culminating in an official statement that it was restructuring, possibly filing for bankruptcy if an investor didn't bail them out. Todd's network of insider sources told Stephen that Brian might face criminal charges for embezzlement or laundering. Grayson, meanwhile, had parted ways quietly, rumored to be cooperating with investigators. The once prestigious brand, known for cutting-edge fashion, now lay in tatters, collateral damage from the management's moral and legal failings. Stephen watched it all with a tempered sense of satisfaction. He'd built no illusions about being a hero to the brand's employees, but at least Brian, who orchestrated so much of Chelsea's betrayal, was paying dearly. Ms. Delgado proceeded with the alienation claim, though in some states such suits had limited success. She argued that Brian knowingly pursued a sexual relationship with a married employee, humiliating the spouse, i.e. Stephen, and willfully undermining the marriage for personal gratification. Coupled with the threatening behavior, 2 confrontations including an arrest, and the meltdown at Stephen's door, the case was robust. Brian's lawyers, faced with the brand's meltdown and potential criminal charges, had bigger problems than fighting Stephen. Within a month, they reached out quietly to Ms. Delgado, seeking an out-of-court settlement. Delgado relayed the offer to Stephen, a significant lump sum payment in exchange for dropping the alienation suit and signing a confidentiality clause about certain details. Stephen felt a wave of triumph. "He wants to pay me off to keep it hush-hush," he said to Ms. Delgado. "Should I accept?" Delgado, pragmatic, said, "A big payout might be wise. You can walk away with financial security, or we can refuse, go to trial, risk a lesser or bigger award, plus more public drama. Your call." Stephen thought it over. Part of him wanted to drag Brian through public depositions, ensuring the maximum humiliation. But a guaranteed settlement might be simpler, especially with the brand on the brink. He told Delgado, "Negotiate the best figure you can. If it's satisfying, I'll sign." Meanwhile, Chelsea sank deeper into desperation. She'd lost the divorce, now had minimal assets, only a small portion of personal savings, no spousal support, and minimal career prospects after being tainted by the brand's scandal. A few acquaintances told Stephen that she'd tried applying for PR roles at smaller firms, but found her name was red-flagged in the industry rumor mill. She had no stable housing, bouncing between a friend's guest room and possibly a short-term sublet. She texted Stephen sporadically. Short updates, attempts at apologies, once or twice begging for a loan to get on her feet. He never responded. Ms. Delgado warned that if she tried any legal approach for spousal support again, the final ruling would override it. She had no recourse. One afternoon, Todd forwarded Stephen an email from Grayson. The subject line read, "Personal apology and explanation." Stephen braced himself and opened it. Inside, Grayson wrote a lengthy confession. He'd been part of Brian's circle, lured by the promise of networking, promotions, and lavish parties. He admitted flirting with Chelsea and eventually hooking up, though he claimed Brian was the ringleader. He realized how he'd hurt Stephen, saying, "I can't undo it, but I want you to know I'm sorry for my role." He offered further cooperation if Stephen needed more evidence against Brian or the brand's shady deals. Stephen's chest felt tight. Another betrayer seeking absolution. He typed a short reply. "Thanks for the apology. I've moved on legally. If Ms. Delgado needs more, we'll contact you. Don't expect forgiveness." A few weeks passed, and Ms. Delgado hammered out negotiations with Brian's lawyers. They offered a substantial six-figure sum to settle the alienation suit and ensure Stephen signed an NDA forbidding him from publicly releasing further details about Brian's involvement in the scandal. Delgado squeezed them for more, referencing the risk of a public trial. Eventually, they reached a final figure that was, in Ms. Delgado's words, "generous and protective of your legal victory." Stephen weighed the moral angle, letting Brian buy his silence. But Delgado reminded him, "You've already exposed him enough for the brand to collapse. This settlement is basically an admission of guilt. The NDA just stops you from going on a public crusade. You've won, financially and morally." He consented. The settlement check cleared into his account a week later, bolstering his post-divorce finances. Ms. Delgado declared it a slam-dunk outcome for you. Todd congratulated him. "You took down the boss, got paid, and ended the marriage on your terms. That's the best revenge." Though the trial concluded, a few final legal formalities remained. Ms. Delgado kept Stephen updated as the official decree absolute was processed, finalizing the dissolution of marriage in every sense. Soon, he received a thick envelope from the court. The final stamped decree stating, "Marriage dissolved on grounds of adultery, awarding property to Stephen Hawthorne, disclaiming spousal support." The language felt coldly official, but it also rang like a liberation bell. He sat in his living room, the decree in hand, allowing himself a moment of quiet reflection. The ring finger on his left hand still bore a faint tan line from where his wedding band once lay. He retrieved that band from a drawer, gazing at it one last time. This ring once symbolized a promise she broke. He considered throwing it out or selling it, but decided to store it away, a stark reminder of what he overcame. Life moved on. He upgraded part of the condo, repainted walls, replaced furniture that reminded him too much of Chelsea. The financial cushion from Brian's settlement plus the saved property rights left him stable, if not wealthy. He poured renewed focus into his software security consultancy, picking up new clients, impressed by his calm under personal strife. On a random weekend, while grabbing groceries at a nearby store, Stephen spotted Fiona in another aisle, rummaging for produce. She noticed him and waved with a hesitant smile, approaching to say hi. "How you doing?" she asked, softly scanning his face. "I heard about the final divorce. Must be tough." Stephen shrugged, a faint smile. "It's a relief, actually. Harsh, but necessary." Fiona nodded, lips pressed. "I'm sorry I never told you about the parties earlier. I suspected something was off, but I wasn't sure how to approach you." He gave a short nod. "It's done now. Thanks for the heads-up you gave me eventually. Wish it came sooner, but better late than never." She looked apologetic, but also relieved that he wasn't furious at her. They parted on polite terms, a small sliver of closure with the brand's staff who had known. Weeks after the final decree, Chelsea texted Stephen a cryptic, "I need to see you for closure, please. Just an hour at a cafe, Ms. Ati." Delgado had advised ignoring such requests, but part of Stephen felt a tiny sense of curiosity or compassion to hear her last words face to face. He arranged a public meeting at a quiet coffee shop. She arrived looking worn, hair dull, eyes carrying guilt. She sat across from him, stirring a cheap latte absent-mindedly. "Why did you call me?" he asked, arms crossed. She swallowed. This is likely the last time we'll talk. I just wanted to say I'm truly sorry. I know I said it before, but I needed to say it once more. Now that it's all final." He sipped his black coffee. "You said that many times. But you still slept with them for months. Sorry if I'm not moved." She nodded, tears shining. "I get it. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can't live with myself unless I at least tell you I loved you once, a lot. I hate myself for destroying it." He studied her face. "I loved you too. But that's gone." She sniffled. "I'm leaving the city. I have an aunt in another state who offered me a small job and a spare room. I just want a fresh start. I wanted to do one last conversation to see if you still hate me." He sighed, a flicker of complicated emotion. "Hate is strong. I resent you, yes, for humiliating me. But I'm not carrying that bitterness forever. I'm just done with you. I wish you luck, though." She let out a shuddering exhale. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, with trembling fingers, she pushed a small envelope across the table. "Old pictures of us I had. I can't keep them. You can throw them if you want." Stephen accepted it, a pang in his chest. "All right." They parted with minimal fanfare, no hugs, just a final nod. As she left the cafe, shoulders drooped, Stephen felt a swirl of closure and sadness. This is truly the end. Back at his condo, Stephen flipped through the old pictures from the envelope, a few honeymoon snapshots, silly selfies from their early years. It stung, but also reminded him how far he'd come from that gullible husband. He tucked them away in a box labeled Past, alongside the wedding ring. Then he set the box in a storage closet, closing the door on that chapter for good. Todd visited that evening with celebratory takeout. "You're free, man," Todd said, raising a glass of soda. "Divorce done, brand meltdown complete, Brian indicted or close to it, and you might get that big settlement. How's it feel?" Stephen exhaled, a slow smile forming. "Feels like I can breathe again. No illusions hanging over me. I can focus on me, my career, building a future with no betrayal." Todd grinned. "That's the spirit. Cheers to the next phase." They clinked cups. As night settled, Stephen stepped onto his balcony, gazing at the city lights. He felt a cautious sense of triumph he'd won. The woman who scorned him, the men who thought him a clueless fool, were all paying the price, and he stood victorious. With his condo, a stable career, financial security, and most importantly, freedom from the torment of that betrayal. He whispered to himself, "I did it. No regrets." The city lights blinked back, indifferent yet affirming. He turned away from the balcony, stepping inside to chart a new path, stronger, wiser, and finally unshackled from the treachery that once threatened to consume him. Chapter 12. Months passed in a steady rhythm, each day carrying Stephen further from the storm that was Chelsea's betrayal. He'd grown accustomed to living alone, finding a sort of peaceful solitude in the condo, once marred by memories. He thrived in his software security consulting work, gaining new clients impressed by his calm under personal adversity. Todd's regular visits gave him a sense of camaraderie over beers. They'd laugh about how the brand boss lost everything, or how Grayson begs for a second chance in the industry. Allegra Couture, or what was left of it, had filed for corporate restructuring. Brian faced lawsuits from multiple angles. One from the board for misappropriation. One from employees for harassment, plus Stephen's alienation claim. Ms. Delgado informed him that Brian's attorneys were pushing a settlement again, though the brand's finances were in freefall. Stephen had already accepted the separate personal settlement from Brian. The brand's meltdown was just extra schadenfreude. Chelsea had indeed left the city, her social media silent or deleted. Fiona sometimes texted Stephen brief updates. She's living quietly, taking a small PR gig at a local chain store. He felt no desire to re-establish contact. The final decree was unchallengeable. She'd occasionally ask Ms. Delgado about amending the settlement, but Delgado shut her down. Stephen decided to undertake a major condo renovation, fresh paint in the bedroom, a modern redesign of the living area. He removed every trace of furniture that bore a connection to Chelsea's aesthetic. With Todd's help, he installed new smart home features, state-of-the-art security cameras, advanced thermostats, even a voice-automated coffee maker. Partly, it was a cathartic reprogramming of his environment, symbolically wiping away the old illusions. On the mantel, he placed a single-framed photo of himself and Todd from a recent hiking trip. No wedding pictures or couple shots. It felt liberating to see only images of genuine friendship, not betrayal. Friends teased him about dating again, but he wasn't rushing. Healing came first. The final threads of the alienation of affection lawsuit took shape in a quiet hearing. Ms. Delgado updated him that Brian, facing a potential criminal trial for financial crimes, offered a mid-range settlement specifically to close the alienation claim. He can't handle another public court fiasco, Delgado explained. He's basically paying hush money. Stephen weighed it. He'd already taken one settlement from Brian personally. This new negotiation might overlap. Ms. Delgado clarified that the brand's meltdown didn't negate the possibility of a separate settlement. Brian's personal finances might still be substantial from prior earnings. In the end, they accepted a moderate sum. Ms. Delgado reasoned that if they pressed too far, Brian might fight harder or be unable to pay due to brand bankruptcy. A moderate figure, combined with a formal written apology from Brian, felt like a satisfying conclusion. Part of the negotiated terms included a letter from Brian acknowledging that he willfully engaged in an intimate relationship with Ms. Chelsea Hawthorne, undermining the marital bond and causing emotional harm to Mr. Stephen Hawthorne. Ms. Delgado mailed the letter to Stephen, typed on Brian's personal letterhead, painfully acknowledging wrongdoing. Stephen read it, emotions swirling. A forced apology, but an apology nonetheless. He placed it in a file labeled Vindication. Let Brian stew in humiliation, likely under pressure from his lawyers and uncertain future. One weekend, Todd threw a casual party at a local pub to celebrate the official closure of the lawsuits. A handful of Stephen's old college friends came, along with some of Todd's tech associates. Over beers, they toasted Stephen's newly finalized freedom. Some half-joked about how to pick your next partner, while others admired his stoic perseverance. Stephen smiled, grateful for their support. It felt surreal. A year ago, he was a naive husband trusting in Chelsea's busy schedule. Now, he was a man who'd fought a war of betrayal and come out stronger. Todd gave a short speech. Here's to Stephen, the guy who turned heartbreak into a masterclass in strategic revenge. Cheers, buddy. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the pub. Stephen felt a wave of relief and contentment. He'd never asked for this journey, but he emerged with self-respect intact and a new sense of confidence. Sometime later, Ms. Delgado forwarded a letter from Chelsea's counsel. A short note read, Ms. Chelsea Hawthorne wishes to inform Mr. Stephen Hawthorne she's completed her relocation, is stable, and respects the court's decisions. She will not attempt further legal claims. She apologizes once more for her actions. Stephen read the short letter in his living room, alone. So she'd officially ended her attempts at restitution, apologized via her lawyer. He felt only a faint pang. Any love they once had was gone, replaced by acceptance that their story ended in betrayal. He slid the letter into the same file as the others. One late evening, he ventured onto the condo balcony. The city glimmered below, a million lights like scattered diamonds. He mused on how swiftly life can pivot from comfortable routine to heartbreak and vengeance. If not for Todd's instincts, if not for his own discovery at that hotel, he might still be the clueless spouse. Instead, he'd chosen confrontation and destroyed the illusions. He recalled the heartbreak upon seeing her in that jacuzzi, the swirl of anger and devastation that nearly broke him. Yet each confrontation sharpened his resolve until he systematically dismantled her web of deceit. Now he stood on the other side, battered but unbroken, even financially bolstered by settlement payouts. Over the following months, Stephen settled into a balanced life, focusing on building his consultancy brand, occasionally traveling for client visits, exploring new hobbies like rock climbing with Todd. Freed from the constant suspicion and tension of his marriage's final months, he found calm. He even reopened the idea of dating, though casually, ensuring no illusions or rushed commitments. Some acquaintances called him lucky for escaping a toxic spouse with minimal losses. He shrugged off such remarks. Lucky wasn't the right word. He earned his triumph through heartbreak, strategic planning, and unwavering follow-through. One day, Todd discovered an unsent email in the brand's old servers, seemingly drafted by Grayson months before the meltdown. It was addressed to Stephen's personal account, but never sent maybe second thoughts by Grayson. In it, Grayson wrote, "Stephen, you don't know me, but I want to warn you. Chelsea and Brian have been hooking up for months. I can't watch them mock you anymore. If you see this, confront them. You deserve the truth." Stephen read it with a sense of irony. Grayson had, at one point, considered coming clean before everything exploded. If he'd received that email earlier, maybe it would have saved him from witnessing the jacuzzi fiasco. But it was moot now. He filed it away as yet another footnote in the saga. Finally, as the dust settled, Brian indicted, the brand in shambles, the divorce concluded, Stephen felt a true sense of closure. One bright Saturday, he decided to do something symbolic. Stepping to the balcony with a small metal box containing the wedding ring, old photos, and printouts of text logs. He lit a small flame in a safe metal bin, with a fire extinguisher ready, dropped the photos and printouts in, letting them burn away. The ring he kept, if only as a tangible relic. He watched the ashes drift, the city breeze carrying them off. No more nightmares, no more illusions. He whispered a goodbye to the past, turned, and walked back into his condo, free to shape a future untainted by betrayal. Later that night, Todd texted, "So, big journey, huh? Proud of you, man. Let's catch a flick." Stephen smiled. "Sure, let's celebrate the new chapter." And so Stephen Hawthorne closed the final page on Chelsea's betrayal, armed with the knowledge that he'd faced heartbreak, overcame it with strategic brilliance, and secured both his dignity and a new lease on life. Betrayal might have shattered him momentarily, but in the end he emerged stronger, victorious, and resolute, far from the naive husband he once was. Hey, listeners of Temptress Cheating Tales!